As personal trainers, we know progressive overload. You start with a good foundation and you build up from there. Now, retirement planning is exactly the same. Welcome to my channel. My name is Coach Nelly, and I'm the creator of Fit Method, which stands for freedom through financial literacy, insurance, and training. And in this particular video, let's talk about what annuities are in the whole scope of retirement planning. Now, why is this important for personal trainers? Well, in my 20 plus years in the industry, I will admit when it comes to anything that's financial literacy related, we have no resources. There is nothing. All we get is information about sales and marketing, but in order to create a good foundation of wealth and all of that, that's not even related. There are no resources for us. And I can see the repercussions of that lack. So I will be surrounded by great personal trainers who are good in programming and client relationships and sales. However, behind the scenes, I also see the anxiety, the depression, and the desperation in order to increase income. And you see this a lot. You see trainers being really good at training, but they're working really long hours, starting from the 6 a.m. session all the way into the 6, 7 p.m. class. They give up their weekends. They're constantly increasing the number of people they're training per session to small group. But still, the net result is the same: exhaustion, worry, figuring out how to make ends meet. And the most random of career paths is when you get a personal trainer, but in their off time, they're also studying for the real estate license or studying for something in order to supplement their income. The net result is the same. There's a lot of evidence where people are great at what they do, but they know they're never going to be financially free. Now that has to change. Now, in a practical sense, when you are training a client, you can see this also. You can see people wanting to do this 300-pound deadlift or doing inversions, in yoga, and suddenly they want to go upside down. But you can see if they're running, their gait is a little bit off. Or when they're squatting, you can see that the femur is internally rotating. So yes, they can, with shortcuts, they can do the exercises that they have seen other people do. But because you're a good personal trainer, you know what the risks are. They have bypassed any of the stabilization type of proprioceptive type of exercises. And therefore, when they're trying to perform a max performing type of exercise, you know what the risks are involved. They're going to injure themselves. And working in finance is exactly the same. You see a lot of people going directly into investing into stocks or into crypto or real estate and doing all of this. But if they don't have a good foundation of how money works or taxes or any of that and that type of concept, those type of concepts, they're putting their entire lives, their entire wealth at risk. And you do not want to do that to yourself. Now, the way that I like to review concepts, it really helps when I draw analogies to personal training career. So let's start off with the pyramid. Again, we are trying to build wealth, but we want to do it safely with a minimal risk, okay? So you already know the 5 phases of periodization when it comes to personal training. First, you start off with stabilization. Then you move on to muscular endurance. Then you go into muscular strength, and then you go into max strength and then power. And when our clients want to move up to that max strength level, but bypassing everything that is beneath, that client is putting his or her body at risk. Okay. Your money is like that also. So let's start off with your foundation. When you are first building and you are looking for stabilization, you want to put your money into vehicles that offers you things like guaranteed payment, okay? When all your other sources of income, shit hits the fan and you lose those sources, you can rely on these financial vehicles that you're always going to have some type of money. You're always going to have some type of income. Annuities falls in this category of stabilization. Okay, it's really conservative, but this gives you a good foundation to build upon. 401ks and IRAs are also other sources of retirement vehicles. Now, they have a little bit more risk, but this falls underneath the umbrella of muscular endurance. You're going to spend most of your career in this phase of saving money, of working, contributing to these accounts and constantly growing it. Now, the growth is a little bit higher than your previous ones, but there is a little bit more risk that is involved, and we're going to go over that in this video. In the next phase, it's going to be muscular development, your hypertrophy phase. So once you level up your 401k and IRA knowledge and your activities, then you move up into even more advanced techniques, but there's different specific activities that's only involved in this level. Kind of like with hypertrophy, you can build that muscular endurance, but if you really want to grow the biceps, there's going to be certain techniques that you want to incorporate. So the isometric holds, the periodization between your workouts, you got to give your rest periods, and incorporated that into your programming. So it gets a little bit more technical. So I would put activities like or financial vehicles like life insurance or Roth IRAs, because even though the money grows similarly to the previous two, the money here grows, but there are added on benefits like tax advantages. It gets a little bit more complex, but in the long run, it is really, really beneficial, but it takes a while to understand the tax implications and the tax advantages. So this particular phase is very, very specific, but you want to build your way up there. Now, the fourth phase is going to be max strength, and this is so Instagram worthy. This is what you see people doing cash flow investments like get yourself into stocks or go buy that crypto or go get that rental property. And then when you get into real estate, it gets really, really complex because there's all these different asset classes, and this is where it gets really confusing. So think of that as Instagram. What you see on Instagram are the most beautiful of yoga poses of the top performing athletes, and they're in their max phase strength, and they're doing the muscle ups, and they're doing those deadlifts. Super, super inspiring and aspirational. But for that particular person to have gotten there, to take that video or do that post, to perform at that level, they had to have passed their understanding of the previous four. So kind of like in the world of investing, I would put investments, cash flowing assets into this category, because really, you want to get those assets that are producing income and revenue for you only after you understand the flow of money and understand all these concepts when it comes to finance as well as tax advantages. Now, from my experience, I have bypassed the first several levels and got rental properties and was screwed. I put my money at risk. I don't want you to go through the same thing that I went through. So build your knowledge, build your foundation of finances first before you get to the highest of risk of activities, because you want to get there safely with minimal risk. Now, at the peak of the pyramid is power, and this is where I would categorize generational wealth. When you are creating wealth, it's not just about getting rich. A lot of people can accumulate the actual cash, but if you are building an entire life, if you're building an entire legacy, you're mostly doing it because not only for yourself, but you're passing it on to your children, to your spouse, to any other family member. You want to create that legacy that passes on generations. So at the very, very top is going to be generational wealth. And you can only do that by understanding taxes, cash flow, and in really establishing a good foundation. In this category, then we get into concepts like law. We get into concepts of how to pass on businesses. That gets really, really complex, but don't confuse any of these phases. There's a time and purpose for each single phase, and there are different activities that are involved. Now, can you go back and forth between the two? Yeah, you can go back and forth and alternate and incorporate some activities that complement each other, but you only do so when you get a good understanding. So let's go back and talk about the first phase in this video, which is going to be annuities. What are annuities? An annuity is a financial contract held by an insurance company for a lump sum. That money grows, and they are promising you payments, guaranteed income for life. Now, I'm going to continue on. There's going to be 5 main characteristics about annuities. 4 of them are general. 1 of them is very specific for personal trainers. So let's review the first one. An annuity is a financial contract. It is not an investment. It gets taxed differently, and it's categorized on your tax documents differently. Okay, so an annuity is a financial contract. The money is held by an insurance company, opposed to 401ks and IRAs. That's in a retirement vehicle also, but the money sitting there is actually invested into the stock market. The money in annuity is held by an insurance company, and the overall structure of it is a contract. Think of it this way. The Social Security program and pensions, your parents may have pensions, or if you work in the government, you may have a pension. It is basically funds that are held by an organization that by the time that you retire, they are promising to pay you out and give you guaranteed income for life, just like the Social Security program. Okay, so you know out of your paycheck, there is money that's going to be deducted and held by the government that by the time that you retire, they're going to be paying you out a certain amount. That's what an annuity is. You're basically creating that structure for yourself to have that guarantee. The second characteristic about annuities is that the growth of that money is actually indirectly correlated to the stock market. I'm going to pause right there. So you have your money in a 401k or IRA. The money that is put in there is actually invested into stocks. So they may put it toward Amazon or Apple or Tesla, okay? And the growth of your 401k or IRA is really dependent on the growth of that particular stock. So if that stock increases, then the value of your account also increases. Now, the growth of an annuity is different. It's a correlation to the stock market. Again, the money is held by an insurance company. So what an insurance company is going to do is take a look at the performance of the stock market. If the stock market is growing, they're going to take that growth and correlate it to your annuity policy, and they'll credit it by a specific amount. So your money is not put into the stock market directly. It's held by the insurance company, but it's credited based on a correlation to the stock market. Now, the third characteristic, which is super important to understand, is because of that correlation, your money is protected against market downturns. I'm going to say that slowly and go a little bit in detail. So if you have your money placed in a 401k or IRA, and that money is actually put into the stock, it's great when the stock market is growing. Now, what happens when there is a recession and the stock market is actually falling? Well, your money falls too. The value of your 401k and your IRA falls with it. Now, the value in your annuity does not, because it's directly correlated to an asset, which is the stock market. The insurance company during those recessions can redirect that correlation to any other asset that is growing at that time. So other assets, they may have that correlation pointed to. It could be gold, it could be silver, it could be CDs, it could be mortgage loans. Those are all income and revenue generating as well. So just because one asset, which is the stock market, is falling, the insurance company, kind of like a third party, they're just going to say like, oh, well, that's falling. I'm just going to point this annuity and correlate it to something else so that during those times, during those recessions, your annuity can still continue to grow. In an annuity contract, during those tough times, it could grow net zero while all other assets are falling below zero, or it can be growing at a nominal amount. It may be a little bit more conservative, not as generous during the great times, but at the least, you are not losing money. So that is really important to know. A characteristic of annuities is that your money is protected against market downturns, whereas your money invested into other retirement accounts, they are at risk during those market downturns. Go back to the chart. That's why I put 401ks and IRAs in a separate phase than your stabilization phase. Now, the fourth characteristic about annuities is that growth of your annuity, the returns are very conservative. I'm not going to lie. So the growth that you see in, let's say, if you put your money in the stock market, again, non-recession times, okay, they could be growing, anywhere between 5 to 7, all the way up to 10, 12, 20% maybe, right? You will be sold on the idea of like, if you put your money into real estate, you can get cash on cash returns a lot higher than if you were to put it into annuities. You should put your money into crypto because here are the returns and all of this. Let's go back to the chart. When we're talking about annuities, we're only talking about the stabilization phase. You're putting your money into financial vehicles that are honestly the most conservative, but with the least risk, because you are protecting your money and you want that guaranteed income. Whereas if you put your money into vehicles that fall into the other phases, there's higher risk, okay? And they don't necessarily guarantee you income. So the purpose of an annuity is totally different, okay? Now, let's go back to the amount of growth. It is really conservative. But once you get that foundation and you are ready to move up, then you can move up to the different asset classes, then different strategies that do produce you higher returns, knowing that there's different risks involved. But if these other asset classes fall, you can always go back to stabilization. You can always go back to annuities because that money is guaranteed. So now let's go over the fifth characteristic of annuities, and this one is very specific for personal trainers. And the reason I bring this up is I know in our careers, you first start off in one gym, give yourself some time, maybe at least a year, and then you move on to a different gym, and then move on to a different gym, and you may move on to a different fitness center or a medical center, or you branch out. There is a lot of movement. Now, every single employer of the employers who give you that opportunity to opt into a 401k, which you should have, you jump from different employers and oftentimes forget that you had a 401k. Let's say the provider was T. Rowe Price or Fidelity or Voya. So it is really common for personal trainers to jump around employers and forget they had previously left the 401k in some type of account. It's really common in our industry because we tend to not work for one employer for, 7 to 10 years. We're always jumping. With that said, you can get an annuity for you, and it's really, really easy. So let's say that you have jumped around different gyms, and by the time that you're 30 or in your mid 30s or so, and let's say the total value of all of these miscellaneous 401ks end up being about like 30,000 or so, highly, strongly recommend that you roll it over into an annuity. Now, the rolling over process, a lot of people will say, hey, you should move your money and roll it over into an IRA. Let's go back to the chart. And again, this is from one personal trainer to the next. This is why I say do not put it into an IRA. Let's go back to the chart. Annuities are in stabilization. The next level up is going to be your IRA. Now, why is that? Let's reiterate. There's a higher level of risk during the market downturn. In annuities, there is not. You want to make sure that the money that you have put into your 401k is protected. This is guaranteed income. Now, what the rollover process is like, basically you and I get on the phone and we make sure that we get access to your previous 401ks. We fill out some paperwork, and then the insurance company, your new insurance company, is going to coordinate efforts with all of those different 401k providers and basically get access to those funds and consolidate it into one single annuity. And then when is that done? Ta-da, you have your annuity, and you and I meet at the least on an annual basis to make sure that the growth is trending and it fits in with the entire overall wealth strategy that you are building for yourself. There is no out-of-pocket costs. There is no fee to me. It seriously is just sitting down on a Zoom call and completing some paperwork, and all of this is done behind the scenes. Super, super, super easy. So as a personal trainer, from one personal trainer's experience to you want to make sure that that this process is as easy and seamless as possible, and then you create a strong foundation and stable foundation for your money. And now that you have created that foundation for yourself, you are ready to move up your financial literacy to the next class, to the next phase, and then finally up to the ultimate goal is creating that true wealth with the most knowledge and the most minimal of risk. If you have any questions, please click on the link below. Get started by downloading your free starter kit, and I will see you in the next video.